Here we have job number 11133, and it's a PlayStation, sorry, dust bunnies are falling everywhere. It's a PlayStation 4 that needs a HDMI port swap. I'll show you the state of this under the camera. Look at that. Evidently, as you can see here, there are pins that have been pushed through the back of the port itself. Lord only knows if we're going to have trace damage on this because it's taken a fair beating. We're not going to be able to tell until we get the port off the board, so let's do that now. Flood the area with flux, and we're just going to put some leaded solder onto the pins themselves. So we're just going to flood it with leaded. There we go. And now we flip the board over. I'm going to apply some leaded solder here on all of the ground pads. Flux first, as always. I need a bigger tip for this. We're going to go with the behemoth. A lot better. Same for this one down here. Adding leaded solder to the board itself is going to make my job a lot easier when I take the port off. Hold it on there long enough for it to soak through the board. There we go. Now we're going to take the board over to the heater and get the port off. I have just removed the port, but I am just giving the back of it a nice clean, just to make sure we clean as we go along. Keep everything nice and tidy. And now we should be looking nice and clean under the scope. You can see there we've cleaned out the ground holes as well. Luckily no torn traces whatsoever, which is really nice. There's a little bit of solder in these ground holes which is just coming out there. I'm going to remove this solder here using wick and my soldering iron, and of course flux. Now another clean, isopropyl alcohol and a cotton swab. Now ready to tin the pads using leaded solder. Again, some more flux. There we go. Soldering iron. And there we go. Do just want to make sure there's enough on here. Perfect. Again, one more clean. One last bit of prep is that we put some flux on here and fill up these holes. The method I like to use is the drop method, which is where we pre-apply all the solder we need to and just drop the port on after. And we should be nice and prepped, ready to go. If I turn this around, you can see how most of the solder has flowed through to the other side. This bit hasn't, so I'll really quickly just add some flux, some solder. There we go. Just creates a really nice bond when we put the port on. And now I warm the board up on the heater, take it back over to the bench, use my hot air and drop the port on. I've tried the drop method with this port, but for some reason, I've tried a couple times to reheat. The pins are still moving. So what I'm going to do is go over them with an iron. I'll be able to do that under the scope so you can see. So sometimes this happens, and I actually think it happens on more so on older gen consoles where you try and drop it in and it doesn't work. Sometimes it could be the new port itself as well. I'm going to get a little bit of solder on the end of my iron and lightly tap it. Each pin. Just like that. Might get some bridges. We can clean them up in a sec. I'll just go over them again, just to make sure they've all got enough solder on them. There we go. We should see no bridges, which I don't think we can there, and they should all be soldered to the pads. I've actually had to change plan because the ports that we have are too long and they don't go on the pads enough. So I've had to take off a port, and now what I'm going to have to do is solder instead of being able to flow it in. Yeah, so if you see, look, this is the port. This is what I tried to drop solder on. As you can see, it probably went straight down the middle. I'm trying to move it over, but that's probably about as far as I get. I'm going to have to just really push over on the port and then solder these legs down here. Some flux down here. Should just be able to tack this down. Get a fat finger out of the way. I don't care about the bridges at the moment. I'm just getting it tacked down. We should be okay. And now we can start sorting out the bridges. Get some wick. Way too much solder here. There we go. More flux. And we should just be able to get rid of this little bridge here. Come on. Just need a little bit of wick, I think. And then, boom. There we go. Annoying that we have to solder that way. I'd much prefer to put solder in the ground holes because as you can see, the ground holes are now empty. When I'm talking about ground holes, I'm talking about these over here. And now the port isn't as secure as what I'd like it to be. But let's test these pins and just make sure they're solid. That's not. That is. That's good. That's not. That is not. That's not. That's not. Okay, so we need to go over these again and make sure that we have a connection. This one isn't either on the end. I guess we can go over them one by one just to make sure that they are solid. It does take time. Need more solder. There's some more flux on those. Just here. Clean our tip. Make sure that we clear that bridge that was there. Try and use the bigger iron to get rid of it. There we go, got it. These ones might be bridged over here. Yeah, they are. No, they're not. Let's test, hopefully for the last time. Nice. I'm going to test with a multimeter as well, just to make sure that we haven't got any bridges. Cool, should be good to go. I've just put solder in the back as well, and as you can see, the solder has come all the way through on the legs, mainly because I've used a huge tip to transfer the heat. And now we can test and see if it's good to go. This is what the final product looks like. Let's turn the PlayStation 4 on. Do we get anything on the screen? Yes, we do. That's a result. If you need a repair, click on the link in the description down below. I'll see you in the next one.